My name is Matsi Modise. I'm all the way from South Africa. What a time to be alive. What a time to be an African, and what a time to be in Abidjan. I'm all the way from South Africa. I'm the Africa lead for the World Climate Foundation, a global climate action platform that's based out of Denmark, and our focus is catalyzing climate finance for emerging and developing markets. In case you missed it, because everyone is talking about EDA, EDA stands for the International Development Association, which is part of the World Bank, and it helps the world's low-income countries. This evening's panel, it's no longer afternoon, it's actually evening, is to highlight how EDA funded projects improve access to sustainable energy and high-quality infrastructure across sub-Saharan Africa. Improving lives is not a one-man show. Everyone has a role to play. We'll have an opportunity to also hear from a Dutch development funding institution around the role of catalytic development funding and the role that it plays in this transformation. I have quite an exciting panelist this evening, and I will have the honor of introducing Mr. Ousmane Diagana from the World Bank. He's the Regional Vice President for West and Central Africa. Can we give them a warm hand of applause? We have Mr. Serge Ekué, who is the President of the West African Development Bank. A warm hand of applause. Last but not least, we have Elies Fongers from FMO, and she is responsible for Sustainable Finance Advisory for Impact Department. A warm hand of applause. The big F word, funding, is very, very important. This transition that we speak about, this enabling decarbonization, ensuring that we're able to electrify our wonderful continent, it's a very important topic that we will be discussing this evening. And the first question that I have for my panelists is, electricity is essential for education, healthcare, and business development. Well, electricity is essential for everything. And how do governments, financial institutions, and private sector accelerate access to reliable, sustainable electricity in underserved regions? And what are the key challenges? Elies, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I think it's a very important topic, and also a very challenging topic. When looking at providing electricity to really the people, to the disadvantaged people, there we see two ways of approaching it. On the one hand, it's really to scale up electricity production at scale, but not only the production of electricity at scale, but also the distribution and other supporting functions, like for instance, battery storage at scale, and then making the connection to the people that really need it. So that's one approach. The other approach is really focusing at distributed energy solutions close to the consumer and also the so-called mini grids. So that's two approaches we see.
No, I think we have very limited timing and plenty more other questions. So I'll hand it over to our next speaker, Mr. Serge.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Well, the question of the energy is naturally central and key. If we had to reprioritize things in our strategy, in our strategic plan, I think we would have started with energy. The energy gap is so huge in our region, and as obvious as it can be, there can't be any development without energy. Naturally, renewable energy, the cheapest possible energy. You know, you can't say on one hand that Burkina Faso has the best soil exposure of the world, and we have this energy gap, this energy shortage in our region. So we're working on that. I think that together, by the way, together naturally with the World Bank, but we clearly have understood that the question of the energy, the need to fill the energy gap is the priority of the priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Serge.
Thanks so very much. Very delighted to be here, and especially to share the panel with a good friend, Serge Ekué.
I need you to
New
speak
friend
into
that
this.
I'm meeting for the first
Thank
time.
you very much.
And I'm glad after this meeting we'll have the opportunity to continue to interact. No, you mentioned IDA. I just would like, for the benefit of all, mention that IDA is a window that has been created in 1960 with the aim to help African countries, but not only African countries, all countries that are least developed to accelerate their development pace. And we cannot do so without having access to resources, to financing, but financing that is concessional. So it's, since its inception, it has supported several sectors, including energy. Now it's really critical to do even more on the energy agenda, because when you engage with African people, focus on Africa, in particular youth, and you ask a question to them, okay? So in terms of what are the challenges that you face, what are the challenges that your continent face, what are the challenges that your country face, you will get essentially three main responses. First, we would like to have access to services that are critical for our well-being. We would like to have access to jobs. And we also would like to have to operate in an environment that will allow us actually to use our potential and to have the state working hand in hand with the private sector in order to create more jobs. So those will not be possible without energy, without electricity. So energy is not a sector, it's an enabler, and I hope that we'll have more opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Osman. Elise, there's this perception of risk when investing in Africa. And being a Dutch development funding institution, I think it's important for us to articulate the risk, the returns, the risk, the benefits. And how can a financial institution such as FMO integrate climate risk into their investment strategies? And climate being a very nuanced area, it's important to be able to measure its risk. So an organization like yours, how do you integrate this particular risk profile as you assess the projects in this environment?
I think when we are talking about climate risk, it's really about assessing how is the climate changing over time and what is the impact, expected impact on the investments that we're looking to make, or actually that the private sector is looking to make. And as a next step, once we've identified what could be the impact of climate change, the idea is to really assess, to reassess the financials in view of the expected changes to the climate, but also the measures that need to be taken to make the investment more resilient to climate change. And that actually will bring down the risk profile of the investment. On the other hand, it will ask for additional specific investments that make the asset more resilient to climate change. And there we see a combination of funding activities that can be funded by the normal banks, like the local banks in the region, investments where development finance institutions and multilateral development banks are coming in, but also sometimes really finance for the public good, because of the risk profile and also because of the earning model. So that's, how we look at it typically.
Sure, and over time we'll have a better handle on the risk and hopefully more returns.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Serge, over the last 40 years, the West African Development Bank has benefited from IDA resources to finance development projects in West Africa. Could you please elaborate on a few flagship projects and initiatives?
Sure. Well, I think first we have, together with the World Bank through the IDA, we have worked on, I would say, 5 strategic sectors. The first one is question of the infrastructure, which is basically how do we commute from point A to point B. And on that front, we have created, through the IDA, we have created more than 1,000 kilometers. With the work with a hand and the help of the World Bank that has injected into our region such less than $500 million. So it's still big money. We also have tremendously worked again on that front. We have refurbed the port of Lomé, for example, totally rehabilitated, refurbed it. We have worked on a number of roads. Let me give one or two examples from Tambacounda in the north of Senegal to Medina. We have worked on a road from Saint-Cassé from Kara to Saint-Cassé in the north of Togo, at the border of Burkina Faso. In the space of affordable housing, 11,000 affordable houses have been created in a region where there's a population pressure, in a region where our population would double every 25 years, which literally means that our sub-region will be as populated as the US in 25 years. So you can imagine the pressure under which we work. Last but surely not the least, everything related to health and education. The 4 or 5 major sectors and the major achievements we have reached over the past years.
Wonderful. I mean, those are amazing catalytic examples and great impact. And I think my question, Mr. Ousmane, is you have a bold ambition, 250 million. It's a bold ambition. And how does the World Bank intend to reach this goal of electrifying 250 million more Africans before this decade ends? How will the World Bank achieve that?
The starting point is that today, about 50% of African population doesn't have access to electricity. So we are talking about 600 million of people. Right. And if the status quo remain, this means that even by 100 years, we'll have many Africans who will be left of having access to electricity. So for a development institution like ours, like West African Development Bank, like African Development Bank, and for many other development partners, this is not acceptable. So the president of the World Bank, having noticed this, I decided actually to act with ambition and boldness. Hence this idea to create the condition to give access to 300 million people to electricity by 2030. The World Bank will pay its share, providing electricity to 250, and African Development Bank has committed to add 50 million more people. And this is fundamental, certainly for development purpose, but also for human rights purpose. Having access to electricity is essentially human right aspect. It's about human dignity. So this is why we are putting forward this agenda. To make it happen, 3 conditions are fundamental. One is certainly financing, and we are committed to do more, to double actually our financing. As we speak, every year for Africa, the World Bank was putting about $3 billion to finance electricity program. Okay, starting next year, we'll do $6 billion for electricity program. It will require also reform, critical reform, actually. And it will require partnership. No organization, be it the World Bank or African Development Bank, will be able to do this alone. And it should not be done only between the World Bank and the state, who are the shareholder for our institution. This has to be done in partnership with the private sector, with the civil society organization, and with everyone.
I loved what you said. It's a fundamental right. Imagine not having electricity. Just imagine that for 1 second. So my closing question, as I've been asked politely to wrap it up, is to all my panelists. how do we achieve this in our lifetime? What are the key things that we need to do in order to achieve this? I'll start with you, Elies.
Like from our experience, what is most important is indeed also partnerships. I think we really need everyone around the table to make the contribution. Private sector, banking sector, government, super important, like other funders. But we really, it can be done. But it's really important to get to rally everybody around the same goal and to really work together on this.
Thanks, Elies. Mr. Serge?
Yeah, with the pressure we have on our shoulder, I think we definitely need to remain focused on the 5 sectors I've earlier mentioned, which are basic sectors. We need to solve basic needs for our population. Let's start with this. And I think that in a 10 years or maybe a generation time, let's have this behind us. To do so, we need capital, naturally, equity, naturally. We need debt, concessional debt. And the Vice President, my brother Ousmane, is 100% right. We also need to enhance our technical capacities. It's all about capacity building. And again, and we need to be mindful of what the populations are expecting from us in a changing world with the threat of climate change. So focus, commitment, dedication, capital, and concessional funding.
Thank you, Mr. Serge. Mr. Ousmane?
We definitely need all hands on desk. Already mentioned partnership. We also need ownership. You know, it certainly is the World Bank and African Development Bank that have launched the initiative. But if the countries who are actually on the driver's seat do not own this agenda, it will not materialize. So this is a fundamental. We need integrity, especially regarding how money, also that will be mobilized, will be utilized. You need the participation of everybody. You know, this is a lifetime agenda, and therefore, all of us have to be together to make it work.
On that note, can we give ourselves and my panelists a warm hand of applause? Thank you.